Good evening and welcome to the Food is Medicine virtual series with the Food Bank of Santa Barbara County. I'm Dr. Lacey Baldiviez. My training is in nutritional biology and I'm the Director of Community Programs and Education for the Food Bank. We are so excited to partner with Rooted Santa Barbara for this discussion on protein needs and how to incorporate more plant-based protein sources into your diet. But before we begin, I have just a few housekeeping points to note. First, please save the date for our next discussion, February 3rd. We will discuss diet trends and answer your questions about popular diets with Food is Medicine original authors Vibeke Weiland and Randy Miller. We are using Zoom webinar tonight, and thus we cannot hear or see you as guests. If you have a question, and we strongly encourage that, please feel free to type it into the chat box at the bottom of your screen. I will read the questions aloud at the end of our presentation and allow our speakers a chance to respond. This webinar is being recorded and it will be available on our website after, so you can share with whoever you like, foodbanksbc.org, and you'll look for nutrition programs. Food is Medicine will be the first thing to pop up. And finally, with that, I'm happy to introduce our partners, Rooted Santa Barbara. We have several instructors here this evening. Have asked each to share a brief introduction of themselves. To start, I'm happy to hand the conversation over to Emma Molina. Emma is a longtime food bank supporter and an educator with our Kids Farmers Market program. Welcome, Emma.
Thank you so much, Lacey. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, wonderful. Hi, everyone. First off, a huge thank you to Lacey and everyone at the Food Bank for inviting us to partner up for this wonderful Food as Medicine series. We have an action-packed presentation for you today, but as Lacey mentioned, we are hoping to get in a few questions at the very end. Before we get into this, one housekeeping item from our end, just a brief disclaimer. We'd like to make it clear that this is a generalized presentation and is not intended as personal medical advice, guidance, or treatment. If you have any questions regarding specific conditions, treatment, or lifestyle changes, those should absolutely be discussed directly with your healthcare provider. Our organization is a nutrition education and food skills resource and does not provide medical advice. All right, now that that's out of the way. Okay, so as Lacey mentioned, my name is Emma Molina, and as she also mentioned, I first began my relationship with the Food Bank as a food literacy educator for their Kids Farmers Market program. I am a plant-based nutrition educator, food skills instructor, and a health coach. I'm also a licensed Food for Life instructor with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine in Washington, D.C., and run Basking in Goodness here in Santa Barbara. I am proudly also one of the co-founders of Rooted Santa Barbara. And my screen is now not moving to the next. There we go. Rooted Santa Barbara is a community-centered plant-based lifestyle initiative that believes optimal health is rooted in prevention. We are a new fiscally sponsored organization of the Santa Barbara Foundation. Our mission is to empower every community member to take a leading role in their preventative healthcare through evidence-based, whole food, plant-based nutrition education and support. And we're doing that by joining forces with frontline partners, including the Food Bank, our neighborhood clinics, and local healthcare providers, as well as entities like the Food Action Network, to expand efforts throughout all of Santa Barbara County. Receiving food is vital, especially for our most vulnerable, but there is a gap in knowing what to do with that food and how best to utilize it for optimal nutritional health. That's where we come in. So, who is Rooted? Rooted was started by a small collective of health and nutrition passionate professionals here in Santa Barbara. We come from a variety of industries, including healthcare, education, nonprofit, science, research, and marketing. While we are all currently based in South County, our aim is to serve the entire county of Santa Barbara in every way that we can. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by two of our steering committee members. And so without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Beth Prince and Dr. Daniela Cadavid. Would you both please go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Hi, everyone. I'm delighted to be here with you all today. My name is Dr. Beth Prince. My day job is working as a primary care doctor at the Santa Barbara Neighborhood Clinic in Goleta. I also have some experience with a food bank. I participated in the food bank's Teens Love Cooking after school program in Carpinteria, which was a lot of fun. So I'm really excited to be part of this joint effort between the food bank and Rooted, and I hope our discussion today will be fun and informative. Dr. Daniela?
Hi, I'm Dr. Daniela Cadavid, and I'm a local dentist here in Santa Barbara and Goleta community. I'm originally from Colombia. I did my dental training in Colombia and again here in the US. I moved to Santa Barbara 4 years ago, and since then I strive to improve the dental health of the community, knowing how big of a role it plays in overall wellness. It is my pleasure to be here with all of you today and to represent Rooted. I also want to thank the Food Bank for giving us this platform to speak to you tonight. I hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us today.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be working with you both. So before we dive into rethinking protein, we want to take a quick pulse check and see where everyone's confidence levels lie. A quick 3-question poll is about to pop up on your screens. Don't worry, this is completely anonymous, but your answers will greatly help us understand the efficacy of our programming. Please, if you can, answer them honestly, and don't worry, we're going to ask you again at the very end, so we're hoping to see a good amount of confidence building in the next 35 minutes. So take your time, and I think Lacey's going to monitor it a little bit, and as soon as we get pretty close to fully answered, she's going to share the overall results. I can't see anything going on, so I'm hoping that it's all going as planned. Well, wonderful. So, okay, wonderful. Look at that. So thank you. That is great. All right, so moving along. Okay, so when most people hear the word protein, I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that this general image is what appears in most people's minds. Beef, chicken, eggs, milk, cheese, nuts, fish, and perhaps some beans and some quinoa in there as well. By the end of today's session, we hope that you begin to see that the foods shown in this picture are also abundant in protein and may in fact be a far superior form of protein due to their overall protein package. And perhaps of equal importance, we hope you walk away no longer concerned that you're getting ample protein so long as you're also eating enough calories. So protein, it's a very hot topic, and by the looks of all the protein supplements on the shelves at the grocery store, it seems to be a vitally important nutrient that we all need a lot of, and perhaps even have a hard time getting enough from the foods we eat. But what really is protein? If we eat it in abundance, will we grow big, strong, and healthy? If we're vegetarian or even completely vegan or plant-based, can we still get enough of it to survive and thrive? When you order a salad with greens, beans, veggies, and sprouts, why are you always asked if you want protein with that? And the choices are typically chicken, steak, or shrimp. Is it possible to not eat meat and still get adequate protein? Well, both of these dinner options have ample protein. However, the standard American dinner is lacking in a laundry list of nutrients and also comes with a lot of excess baggage. When I personally first learned that protein was abundant in plants, I actually had an extremely hard time believing it. Why had I been told this? Why had the doctor-approved standard American dinner plate look the way it had all my life? And why did all vegetarians get a reputation for being unhealthy and frail? We've all been led to believe that we're not getting enough protein, and that protein supplements and excessive amounts of protein-rich foods are necessary for our survival. But that actually couldn't be further from the truth. It's beyond confusing, and unfortunately, it's detrimental to our collective health. In order to clear up some of the confusion, we wanted to take this opportunity to break down what protein is, how our body uses it, which foods it can be found in, and conversely, what are the best sources of it, and how much do we really need to not only fuel, but also protect our bodies. So, Dr. Beth, from a scientific standpoint, can you tell us exactly what protein is and what our body uses it for?
Sure, Emma, thanks. And I agree, protein is a hot topic. And with so many different messages out there, it can be somewhat overwhelming. I'm hoping with today's talk, we can digest some of this information and make it more absorbable for everyone. So what is protein? Simply stated, proteins are large molecules that are used in the body to provide structure and carry out key functions. Protein is one of the 3 macronutrients, the other 2 being fat and carbohydrate. Protein is found everywhere throughout the body. We can think of protein as the main component of tissues such as muscle, tendons, ligaments, major organs, skin, hair, nails. Blood and bone marrow are all made of protein and are our hormones. The function of protein in the body relates to the structures I just mentioned, supporting and moving our skeleton, covering and protecting our body, transporting oxygen, regulating cell growth and tissue repair, and being the major component of our immune system in the form of cells and immunoglobulins. So Emma, you asked me to get scientific here. So let's talk a little bit about amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks of protein. There are 20 in total. 11 are considered non-essential. We don't need these in our diet as our bodies can make these from scratch. 9 are essential and must come from our diets. So protein from animal sources contains all 9 essential amino acids, whereas protein from plants may or may not contain all 9. This used to be referred to as complete protein versus incomplete protein, and vegetarians were told to pair up complementary foods when eating. But this thinking has been shown to be false, and food pairing is unnecessary, and we are going to explain that further today. So the total 20 amino acids are sufficient to make all the thousands of different proteins our bodies need, just like the 26 letters in the alphabet make all the words in our language. And all amino acids have the same general structure shown here in the diagram. There are 3 main parts, and it's easy to remember because those parts are also how amino acids get their name. Amino stands for the amino or nitrogen containing group shown here in purple on the left, and acid for the carboxyl or acid group represented here on the right in red. The only thing that varies from one amino acid to another is the side group designated the R group on the diagram. It's the R group that gives each amino acid its individual property. So listed here are the 9 essential amino acids. I don't know if any of these names sound familiar. Maybe you've heard of tryptophan. Tryptophan is the precursor to serotonin, a chemical in the brain and gut that regulates mood. Another amino acid that's getting a lot of buzz right now is methionine. There are some really interesting longevity studies that show that lifespan can be extended by limiting intake of methionine. This is called methionine restriction. Methionine is abundant in animal protein, but relatively sparse in plant protein. So a good way to limit methionine in the diet over a lifetime is to limit intake of animal protein. So now that we understand amino acids are the building blocks of protein, it's useful to understand that these building blocks are organized into long chains that twist and fold into very large, complex, and specialized structures. So I think it's a common misconception that when we eat a certain type of protein, our body will make more of the same. This misconception may be the reason some people associate eating meat with growing muscles. It sounds plausible, right? Eat meat to grow muscles. But once you understand protein metabolism, you understand that this thinking is false. So if protein is bulky and complex, how do we transport it through our gut wall, which is relatively solid, like a piece of cloth? I like to think of an analogy in which amino acids are Lego blocks. Imagine a big, bulky, complex lentil protein, for example, and that's the Lego castle in the upper left-hand corner. And you need to get this castle to your friend on the other side of a wall, a gut wall, that contains thousands of 1-inch wide holes. You're never going to fit the castle through the openings intact. But if you deconstruct the castle into the individual Legos, you can easily pass the Lego blocks through the openings. Your friend on the other side now has thousands of different colored Legos or amino acids. He can build them back into the castle if he knows how, or he might really want or need a Tyrannosaurus Rex, so he builds this instead. The body does essentially the same thing. It breaks down, absorbs, and reassembles protein into whichever type of protein is needed. It also maintains a pool of spare protein parts, molecules that are recycled and ready to go on demand. So we don't need to worry about getting every essential amino acid in our diet every single day. And to further the analogy, we can't construct a Tyrannosaurus Rex or a chicken thigh or a lentil protein in our body, so we don't have to eat beef or chicken to grow muscles or any other body part for that matter. We can get all the protein and amino acids we need from plants if we want to. And there are a lot of reasons, which we will be discussing, why we would want to. And finally, think of all the animals with big, strong muscles, such as gorillas, elephants, and rhinos, that never eat anything other than plants. The muscles of these animals come from nothing other than the protein from the plants they eat. And one other key point about protein is that it is not a preferred source of energy for the body. The body will preferentially utilize first carbohydrate in its various storage forms, followed by fat in its storage form, and finally, only in times of extreme stress, such as starvation, will the body break down protein for use as energy. So when we overconsume protein, and typically we are consuming almost twice as much as we need on a daily basis, the excess gets stored as fat or glycogen for future energy demands and excreted in the urine. Well, some of it gets excreted in the urine, what isn't stored. So from a health perspective, there is no benefit in over-consuming protein. In fact, studies show that consumption of excess meat is a key risk factor in the development of insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. Just an extra half serving of meat a day increases the risk of type 2 diabetes by 48%, according to the Nurses' Health Study. And numerous other epidemiological studies back up this finding.
Wow, thank you for explaining all of that. Clearly, it's incredibly counterintuitive for us to be so obsessed with protein. It's just so frustrating because it feels like every fitness expert, food company, or magazine article seems to be pushing extra protein on us. In fact, it feels like there's a general assumption amongst most people I speak to that they genuinely believe more is better when it comes to protein. It's easy to see why people are so confused. And of course, there are certain life stages when we will need a little extra protein, but it appears to be, like many of our health concerns in this country, a little out of control. So let's get down to it. How much protein do we really need?
Well, there is a surprising lack of consensus on daily requirements for protein. We didn't begin to answer this question until the 1940s. First, the Food and Drug Administration was trying to set wartime minimums, and then subsequently, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization in 1955 set out to issue nutritional guidelines. This was updated numerous times. Currently, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, in conjunction with the World Health Organization, says 0.66 grams per kilogram per day, and the FDA says 0.8 grams per kilogram of lean body mass per day. Lean body mass is how much someone weighs without fat. For a 160-pound man, depending on how lean he is, his requirements are anywhere from 38 to 46 grams of protein a day. You can imagine how impractical this information can be. Who here on this conversation knows their lean body mass in kilograms? I sure don't.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that because I sure don't either. So I agree with there is not a clear consensus, so it makes the whole situation even. Most people think the more protein they eat, the better. As a matter of fact, there is so much fuss about protein in this country when actually protein deficiency is virtually non-existent in a standard American diet. So how much protein do we really need? Well, the answer is simple. A lot less of than you think. But I know you probably like numbers, so I'm gonna throw some statistics. 97% of Americans get more protein than they actually need. Even vegans and vegetarians on average get 70% more protein of what they need in a day. The point is, if you're eating enough calories, you're getting enough protein, period. So let's all please take a deep breath. Let's inhale, exhale, and stop worrying about your protein intake.
And I think it's worth noting too that doctors are often misinformed as well. Doctors receive on average less than 20 hours of nutrition education in medical school. And according to a recent study published in The Lancet, medical students reported feeling unprepared to counsel in nutrition and as having insufficient nutrition knowledge and skills to effectively support dietary behavior changes in their patients. When I think back to my medical school nutrition training, I recall being taught about specific dietary deficiencies that we rarely see, such as scurvy caused by vitamin C deficiency. It was almost a historical nod to diseases of the past. But I do not remember being taught about the chronic conditions of today and how they are caused by the typical diet of most Americans. These conditions of dietary excess are so prevalent and so devastating. I think we owe it to our patients to recognize that the foods they eat matter and acknowledge the diet as the proximate cause of the majority of chronic conditions and to inform our patients of this fact. Sometimes this message is tough to hear, but once patients hear it from their doctor, they are much more likely to make changes. I think the message about diet is much more well received if it comes from a place of understanding the challenges patients face when choosing and changing their diets. Perfection is not required, just a push in the right direction. And it doesn't hurt if we as doctors are willing to make some of these changes in our own lifestyle and model the behavior and the benefits.
I couldn't agree more with you, Dr. Beth. I feel like there is a tremendous opportunity here, and I realize it can be extremely overwhelming for our healthcare providers. Time with patients is extremely limited. Insurance codes are mind-numbingly restrictive, and change is really hard. I'm excited to witness more and more doctors embrace this newer lifestyle medicine approach to their practices and look forward to watching it grow, especially here in our community. Rooted exists to bridge this exact gap, to be a resource and support to our incredible medical community here in Santa Barbara, a bridge many of us didn't have when we were seeking it out. I certainly have experienced that personally. But gosh, Daniela, back to your point, 97% of Americans are getting too much protein. So what does that do to our bodies over time?
Well, unfortunately, if we eat too much protein for too long, it could potentially have detrimental effects on our body. And sadly, most people still think protein is the most vital nutrient out there. And the more we eat, the better. But what no one really seems to be talking about is the link between excess animal protein and chronic illnesses and diseases. Let's take kidney disease as an example. Within hours of consuming meat, either beef, chicken, fish, our kidneys dramatically increase their workload. The main reason this happens is because animal proteins are metabolized into acids. These acids increase ammonia production, in turn damaging our kidney cells.
And also, just to jump in, let's not forget that processed meats, items like bacon, ham, chorizo, salami, deli meats, hot dogs, pepperoni, etc., are officially classified by the World Health Organization as a Group 1 carcinogen, which means they're known to cause cancer. Basically, processed meats are the new cigarettes. It should also be noted that red meat, including beef, lamb, and pork, have also been classified as Group 2A carcinogens, meaning they probably cause cancer.
Oh, these are such important details to know and to truly digest. And look, as we mentioned before, we cannot store protein. If we could, we would all just kick back, gasoline protein shakes, eating some chicken breast, and getting bigger and stronger muscles. Wouldn't that be nice? But it doesn't work that way. On the contrary, we do store fat. And any excess protein, unfortunately, is gonna end up being stored as fat. Plus, animal protein already comes packaged with saturated fat, which only adds to the problem.
So this all sounds a bit doom and gloom. Is protein actually bad news?
No, not at all. Protein is incredibly important for our body, but we simply don't need as much as we have been led to believe. What also is missed by most is that protein is abundant in plants. And even more important is that plant protein comes in a much more complete package. As you can see, when we compare 100 grams of steak with 100 grams of black beans, they have virtually the same protein value. And that's not the best part. The best part is that beans come packaged with fiber, micronutrients, no cholesterol, no saturated fat. So when we are eating plant protein, we are providing our body with better and greater sources of nutrients to work with and not overindulging unnecessary amounts of animal proteins.
And sure, I know there's some of you out there that are thinking, yeah, but I'd rather eat a big juicy steak than a can of beans. And we're not saying don't ever eat the stuff, but what we are saying is that we need to rethink the quantity we're currently eating, and we need to be adding more of the good stuff in that counterbalances these choices. We really want to move away from counting calories and counting grams of protein and lean more into our own personal intuition of eating a wide variety of balanced foods, colorful food that supply us with a diversity of nutrients.
And by choosing beans over beef, you'll very likely reduce your risk of heart disease. And after all, heart disease is the #1 cause of death for both men and women in this country.
To add to your point, I love this quote from Dr. Greger, one of the leading plant-based doctors. If that's all a whole food plant-based diet could do, reverse our #1 killer, shouldn't that be the default diet until proven otherwise? In fact, the fact that it may also be effective in preventing, treating, and arresting other leading killers seems to make the case for plant-based eating simply overwhelming.
Absolutely. Fact is, red meat is oversold and beans are underrated. Beans are a staple in nearly every culture on Earth. They are a fundamental ingredient among some of the longest lived cultures in the world. If you're unfamiliar with the Blue Zone study, I highly recommend you check it out. It's fascinating and humbling all at once. I know it sometimes seems like a whole food plant-based diet is some new approach to eating, popular amongst the wealthy, but this is not new. This is how the majority of cultures lived before the great American food revolution brought mass-produced fast food to every corner of every town. Ironically, none of the top shelf animal-based foods are as good for you as the cheapest plant-based staples. And my goodness, beans are incredibly inexpensive, especially considering their nutritional heft, and are an incredibly versatile food that can be added to virtually any type of dish, from salads, soups, stir fries, smoothies, dips, sauces, casseroles, pastas, you name it.
Excuse me? Beans in a smoothie?
Yeah, I sneak beans in wherever I can. White beans or Great Northern beans are particularly great as they are very neutral in taste and act as a thickener, while also providing a really nice amount of fiber and protein, particularly great for kids who gravitate to sweeter, more fruity smoothies like my daughter does. I also use beans for making salad dresses creamy. Just open a can of beans, rinse them, whiz them up in a blender with some vinegar, some fresh herbs, and splash of water. It's so easy, it's dirt cheap, incredibly healthy, and absolutely delicious. But just in case you're not totally sold on beans, here are a few of our favorite sources of whole plant foods that have healthy amounts of protein, fiber, and a host of other nutrients. You know, it's funny, there's another misnomer that if you stop or even greatly reduce your intake of animal-based ingredients, that you'll be gnawing away on carrots and living a deeply miserable life. But that simply couldn't be further from the truth. A whole food plant-based diet is the antithesis of restrictive. When we stop thinking about food as a single source nutrient, and start focusing on the holistic foundation of nutrition, it's actually incredibly liberating. As our friend Michael Pollan says, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. It really is that simple.
I absolutely agree with you, Emma. The variety of foods to be discovered is huge. One of the benefits of this way of eating is that plant proteins come in a more complete package. And one of the main reasons that makes this package so wonderful is fiber. It is very important to note that fiber is only found in plants. However, no one seems overly concerned about it, but we should be. It is the one thing we should all be trying to get in our diets. 97% of Americans are deficient in fiber. I want to repeat that. 97% of Americans are deficient in fiber. The average Americans consume 15 grams of fiber a day when the minimum recommended is 31 grams a day. We are not even halfway there. This makes a massive toll on our bodies over time. The deficit is so widespread that fiber is now listed as the nutrient of concern in the most recent USDA guidelines. Low intake of fiber can increase the risk of type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, obesity, high cholesterol, and various cancers, just to mention a few.
You know, that's so true. I mean, instead of asking vegans, where do you get your protein? I wish more people would ask non-vegetarians, where do you get your fiber? Because I see patients every day with many of the chronic conditions Dr. Daniela just mentioned. And when I ask them for a rundown of their typical daily diet, fiber is consistently the key nutrient that's missing.
The other really important part about eating more plant-based foods is that certain types of fiber are a natural prebiotic, not pro, but prebiotic, that feed our gut microbes, where 70% of our immune system resides. When we eat a diet high in colorful, fiber-rich foods, we're providing our bodies with the greatest chance for longevity and a robust internal defense system that has a clear directive to protect us and prevent illness and disease. With so many fad diets eschewing carbohydrates, Americans are eating even less fiber than ever before. Sure, skip the donuts and the fries, but don't skip out on the complex carbohydrates. They feed our billions, yes, billions, of healthy gut microbes. They are literally life-giving. So, protein. Do we need a mindset shift? The short answer, yes. Overall, our findings and reviews of hundreds of peer-reviewed evidence-based studies indicate that protein is available to us in great abundance, though not all is created equal, and we should be far more concerned about getting in fiber above all else. Now, I realize that you may be feeling like we've done a little bit of a bait and switch on you tonight, as suddenly this talk is a little bit less about protein and more focused on fiber, but that's kind of the point. We live in a culture very driven by diets, magic pills, and need for instant gratification. But we have our health in our bodies all our lives. If we could all erase what we think we know about food and start from scratch, I believe we'd end up with a much more balanced approach to food and a much healthier population. If we can begin to shift the focus away from animal-based foods for the purpose of protein and move towards consuming a balanced diet that is nutrient-rich and adequate in all nutrients, we're going to experience a literal health revolution. Nutrition is not about what we eat at one meal. It is about our intake throughout the day, over the week, throughout the months and years. Shifting our focus to simply eating more whole food fiber, not supplements, but whole foods, we will invariably deliver the entire spectrum of essential nutrients and learn that adequate protein is actually good enough. So because these will likely come up in a question later on, we wanted to very briefly address two essential macronutrients that may come up: iron and vitamin B12. We have much more detailed information on our website, but very quickly, iron is abundant in plants. However, it can be harder to absorb in plant form. Therefore, it's a great rule of thumb to always include vitamin C rich foods whenever consuming iron rich foods. So spinach with lemon juice, oats with berries, lentils with tomatoes, etc. Doing this will ensure proper absorption. Now, B12 is a vital nutrient. It's vital for healthy nerves and blood, and most people, yes, even meat eaters, need to supplement or eat fortified foods. Contrary to popular belief, B12 does not come from animals. It is actually made from bacteria, and prior to the modernization of farming and our over-sanitized life, we used to get enough simply from eating foods that grew in healthy, dirty soil. So let's make fiber the new protein, meaning let's start making a conscious shift in our community to stop worrying about protein and start eating more fiber. A word of caution though, don't suddenly shift your entire food offering overnight, as you'll likely feel pretty uncomfortable with such a drastic shift. Things can kind of gurgle and bubble down below and really start to move which can be quite a shock to the system at first. So start slow and low. Add a few beans in here and there when making a meal. Ask yourself, what other veggies or fruits or whole grains could I add to this? What produce might brighten this meal up? Have fun with it, get creative, and don't be afraid to experiment. This is not fancy or expensive, and nor does it require great skill in the kitchen. I proudly use canned, frozen, and jarred whole foods all the time, which leads us to the practical stuff. So at Rooted, when we say whole food plant-based nutrition, we mean prioritizing a predominantly whole food, i.e. non-processed, plant diet, meaning fruits and veggies, including leafy greens and starches, yes, even potatoes, 100% whole grains, nuts and seeds, and legumes like beans, peas, and lentils. I don't know about you, but eating delicious food that represents every color of the rainbow seems a whole lot more enjoyable to me than a lifetime of pills and invasive procedures. You don't have to give up your favorite foods that you love either. Love spaghetti bolognese? Try using lentils instead of beef or turkey. If that sounds too scary, go half and half first and work your way up. A jar of your favorite marinara and a package of steamed lentils from the ready-made salad section is all it takes. We also love adding in mushrooms and finely chopped dark leafy greens. Have frozen spinach or spinach in its final days that needs to be eaten? Throw it in the last few minutes. And hey, if you want to make this all from scratch too, more power to you.
Or if you love a tuna sandwich, why not try our family favorite, garbanzo bean tuna salad? Open a can of garbanzo beans, drain and mash half the beans in a bowl. Then add your favorite tuna salad add-ons like red onion, celery, dill pickle, vegan mayo. I like to add capers, salt, pepper, sunflower seeds, and a little bit of chopped seaweed. You can get creative with whatever you have on hand. It's impossible to go wrong with this. And put it on your favorite whole grain bread, top it with tomato, lettuce, and avocado, and you are ready to eat. And my kids love this meal, and I feel better knowing that they're not getting mercury that is found in tuna, and no fishy aftertaste.
Or if you're looking for any ideas for a brunch or craving some scrambled eggs, why don't you try some scrambled tofu? Just smash some tofu and add some turmeric. The key here is to add the turmeric, gives like the beautiful yellowish color. And then after that, you can season it with whatever you want, salt, pepper, garlic, you name it. Another pro tip, you can also add nutritional yeast to give a little bit of some cheesy flavor. And then get creative with the veggies that you want to add, spinach, tomatoes, asparagus, whatever you have left over in the fridge. I promise it won't disappoint you. And if you are too scared and you don't want to try making it first, maybe you can try the one in Savoy Cafe. It's a really, really great one. And as you begin transitioning to a more plant-centric diet, you may find that you are craving some specific animal-based foods. Our steering committee came up with this list of foods that we have served, that it has served us, all of us, in various points of our health journey. For example, mushrooms are incredible. They can adapt to any type of dish. You don't need to be a professional chef to prepare mushrooms in a way that it will truly rival any piece of meat. When eating out in a Mexican restaurant, request vegetarian beans, that they don't have the lard, the vegetable oil, the bacon drippings, or butter. You don't need any of that in your beans. And believe me, you won't even notice the difference. What I'm trying to say here is that moving more towards a plant-based, whole food plant-based diet gives you a whole opportunity to explore new flavors, new options, new foods. And that to me is what makes it so fun and interesting.
And for those of you who are quietly laughing about grilled carrots, I just want to interject here, which I have fooled dozens of people over the years. And we all have carrots in our fridge all the time. So steam and marinate before grilling, and then load up that whole wheat hot dog bun with your favorite fixings, and you will have no idea that it's a carrot and not a hot dog. Seriously, I promise you this. It's pretty mind-blowing. But I mean, let's face it, most delicious food is all about the sauce anyway. So just add more sauce. So on that note, we are just about out of time, but we hope that you've picked up some tips and tricks, and feel and a few helpful nuggets of information, and that you'll see protein in a very different light and perhaps shift your focus to embracing a more fiber-filled lifestyle. Before we get to any questions, we would really love for you to answer our quick poll once again, which should be popping up your screens right about now. And so I'm going to give you a few more seconds to answer those. Please be honest. And we truly hope you'll feel more confident and far less concerned than you did 40 minutes ago. I'll wait a little bit longer on that. Thank you for handling that part, Lacey. I appreciate it. All right. I see slight change there. That looks nice. Wonderful. All right, great. Well, thank you guys so much. So, and finally, in honor of this wonderful Food is Medicine series that the Food Bank has created, we'll end with the father of medicine. Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. What an amazing concept whose time has truly come. And on that note, we would just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. And again, a huge thank you to the Food Bank for partnering with us for their Food is Medicine series. For further information or to help us grow in advanced plant-based nutrition education in our community, we invite you to please follow us on Instagram and or Facebook at Rooted Santa Barbara, or please sign up for our newsletter by visiting our webpage at rootedsantabarbara.org. And let's see, I think we're doing pretty good on time. So Lacey, do we have some questions we can go to?
Yes, the time looks great. I want to thank all three of you for such an incredible conversation tonight. We have some questions, so I'll read those aloud and then you can decide amongst yourselves who would like to answer.
Thank you.
So our first question is about lectins and nightshades and how that affects a plant-based diet.
Sorry, you glitched out a little bit, so I didn't totally hear it.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'll read that one more time. The first question is about lectins and nightshades. How does that affect a plant-based diet?
Yes. Wow, going right to the biggest controversial topics out there, I guess. So yeah, there's unfortunately a big thing about lectins, but you know they're plant carbohydrates that are found in legumes particularly, and they get deactivated with cooking, and they act as sort of like toxins for the plants to help protect against bugs and invaders, and like their natural invaders like bugs. But it's just a part of plants, and there's once you cook legumes, nobody really would eat legumes raw. Lectins are inactivated and not really a problem. I don't know, does anyone else on the panel
I think
have anything to say?
I'll add a little. I mean, I know that this, for many people, when they begin to introduce beans, I think there are two very different topics, because I know that there are definitely people who have nightshade specific issues. I don't think the two are necessarily related. They may feel related, but I don't believe they are. And, as Dr. Beth is saying, usually, once we do cook these foods, trying to think of the exact term, and I'm blanking on it right now. But the fact is if we suddenly eat a tremendous amount, which is what I was saying a few moments ago, it can disrupt the microbiome, and it can disrupt if we've been eating a diet that's a very sort of standard staple the standard American diet, we have created the microbes that are in our gut are very used to a certain thing. And when we start bringing in new foods into that, those microbes are going to react, which they may be cramping, there may be gas, there may be an assortment of different reactions that the body might have. But when we keep doing it, and we just do it in small, slow and low, as I said, slow and low, and we allow those microbes to actually feast on the diversity of foods that we're giving them, over time, they're going to become healthier and more robust. By taking a lectin inhibitor, pill or something like that, we're actually not allowing our microbes to do their natural job. I could probably go on more and more and more about this, and I'm guessing that we should probably go to another.
We do have more questions to get to, so I'll go to the next one. Thank you. My daughter became a vegetarian about a year ago, and she now has issues with anemia. Is there a relationship between vegetarian diets and anemia?
Okay, I'm just going to jump in here. There's probably somebody can answer this better, but I became a vegetarian at age 9, and I was extremely anemic as a child. And I lived basically, I took Floridix every single day as an iron supplement. What I have now realized as an adult and through all of the education I have learned is that I was actually B12 deficient. So I would absolutely recommend that you speak to your daughter's doctor and have her, I don't know what her age is, and if you're doing blood testing at this point, but I would definitely, B12 is a very, very, very important nutrient that, as again, everybody probably needs. So I would recommend B12. And also, as I said earlier, the iron absorption issues that can arise sometimes when we don't eat vitamin C rich foods with those iron rich foods. So those two things, although they sort of seem a little separate, those in my experience are the main contributors to it. But again, something to bring up with her doctor directly.
Yeah, I would just add that there's, you can get, plants provide very good sources of iron. So you wouldn't necessarily say that the vegetarian diet was causing the anemia. So I would just look into that further and have her see her doctor.
Excellent. Okay, next question is, can you all recommend a whole food plant-based book?
Oh, where do we start? We do have a ton of references on our website. Again, that's rootedsantabarbara.org. There are a number of recommendations there. I think from a technical, like the Bible, if you will, that got me going was the China study. But if you want something that's a little bit more palpable, I think How Not to Die is a great book. Are you talking about a cookbook or just a general overview of nutrition? Again, the website has both of those covered quite well.
I would second How Not to Die. Great book. Really answers a lot of questions. Really evidence-based. How Not to Die, Dr. Michael Greger. Great book.
For this next one, I think I will connect with you offline. The question is, I'm working to develop a lesson plan for elementary students in Goleta. I'm curious if you have any techniques on good transitional foods that would get kids more excited about eating plant-based when they're used to animal products. Do you have a quick answer for that one?
Get them in the kitchen. I mean, that is the biggest thing. If you can get kids actually growing food or playing with food or, anything, just get them involved in it. I mean, the Kids Farmers Market program that I was working on with the food bank, I mean, that program I know it was great for the kids, but I think it was even better for me. I mean, what I learned in that class was just amazing. Kids are super open to foods if you allow them to be part of the process.
How about calcium? What plant-based foods can replace milk-based staples such as milk and yogurt?
Yeah, leafy greens. So milk is really not a great source of calcium because of all the other problems with milk. But we didn't really go into that today because it's a huge topic on its own. But as Dr. Greger says, remove the middle moo. Where do cows get their calcium? They get it from the greens. So leafy greens, get your calcium, I would say.
Yeah, and also
top place.
And, you know, another thing is that, you know, again, as Beth just said, you know, cows don't make calcium. They ingest it from the greens. And the reason that we all need vitamin D is because it actually helps our body absorb the calcium. So, you know, vitamin D is a very important nutrient, obviously. Here in Santa Barbara, we do have a lot of sun, but it's another thing to check if you have low calcium levels. It may be because you actually have low D levels, which are inhibiting that absorption from the dark leafy greens and all those other yummies. Get them in the smoothies. Put lots of greens in the smoothies.
We have a ton of questions. I'm going to keep going. How do you suggest one addresses bloating due to legume consumption as it deters someone from eating beans?
You can use Gas X until your microbiome adjusts. So that's an easy shortcut. That would be what I would say. It just helps break down some of that fiber for you until you get the microbes that do it better. And that would be one way. And like Emma said, just transition more slowly, kind of back off of it a little bit.
Low and slow.
Yeah.
I'm going to give another book recommendation here for a second, if I can. There's an amazing book by Dr. Will Bolshevitz, Dr. B, called Fiber Fueled. And it's really, really brilliant. It's kind of one of those life-changing books also, but it's specifically about fiber and the gut. So
Fiber Fueled. Yep. Fiber Fueled. Great book.
Yep.
Emma, what is the name of the study you mentioned when discussing beans?
The Blue Zone.
Sorry?
The Blue Zone study.
Oh, yes. Yeah, the Blue Zones. Yeah, the Blue Zones. It was a project that was commissioned by National Geographic a number of years ago. And it was a study that basically was looking at what are the longest lived cultures around the world and what are the components that each of those cultures share? What are they? So they found that these different areas around the world, they identified them as 7 key blue zones that shared 9 similarities. So they are Ikaria in Greece. There's a place in Japan, I'm blanking on them a little bit, Costa Rica, Sardinia, and actually we have one right here in Loma Linda, California.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Dan Buettner, who also sometimes lives here in Santa Barbara as well. That was a big project that they did with National Geographic. So the Blue Zones, definitely look into it. There's some fascinating films as well and books.
What about GMOs and corn?
I'm going to pass on that question. I'm passing on that question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't personally eat corn unless it's certified organic and non-GMO. Corn is kind of in everything. I think there's a great quote by Michael Pollan that says everything is corn or something. It really is in everything. That's again why a whole food plant-based diet, less packaging, you know exactly what you're eating. And if you are eating corn, you're buying, I get frozen organic, kernels. I love getting our locally grown corn on the cob when it's in season. Yeah, corn is amazing.
So, I mean, yeah.
You just have to make sure it's like organic, but yeah, as Emma said, it's in everything. So just.
And I just want to point out that, I mean, it's better to get fruits and vegetables in your system rather, if it's between not being able to get non-GMO and then eating standard American diet, you're better, whatever you can do to get more fruits and vegetables without overthinking it, I would say.
Do you recommend supplements, for example, B12 for vegetarians or vegans?
Yes, B12, yes.
Yeah.
Again,
It's essential. It's needed.
Yeah.
It's essential.
And so we do actually produce a small amount ourselves, very small, and it needs to be supplemented. I've literally heard of like 3 cases where people produce enough and they don't need it, but it is very, very, very rare. But again, this is something that you should talk to your doctor about, but it's pretty much across the board. Everybody should be on a B12 supplement if you're not eating.
If you take an acid blocker, a proton pump inhibitor, which more and more people do, that it makes it harder to absorb B vitamins. You need an acid environment to absorb B vitamins. So those are people also that should be careful about that.
Next one is a nice comment I'll share. How do we get such woke dentists and doctors for ourselves? You're amazing, and I'd feel safer with my health with people like you advising me.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
You just won the internet and my heart.
That's so sweet.
The questions keep coming in, or the comments. There's like 25 new ones, so we're gonna have to wrap this up. It's wait to let our guests know, but I'll keep going until then. What are your thoughts on the ketogenic diet? People see great results and feel very energized, but I'm unsure if it's sustainable.
You answered your own question, is what
Yeah,
I would say.
It's definitely not sustainable.
No, it's there are certain times when it's, it might be a necessary step for somebody to reach a certain point, but as far as sustainability is concerned, it's not.
Like you're starving your body, like your body only can like live certain amount of periods like in a starvation. If you prolong a keto diet for prolonged period of time, it's nothing good is gonna come out of that.
Regarding proper iron absorption and vitamin C, does it matter which one you eat first?
No, I mean, you're just gonna eat them together. If you want more information on that as well, another thing that can block iron absorption is if you drink caffeinated beverages around the same time that you're eating the food. Chocolate, which my husband's very disappointed about that theory, but so anything that has a lot of caffeine or within like an hour of your eating, it can also decrease some of the body's ability to absorb. But really just, again, whole food, plant-based, we're not eating single source nutrients, where if we have a plate and it's a big plate and it's got iron rich foods and vitamin C rich foods, it's all in there together. It's just a big old melting pot of goodness, and just don't be over concerned with anything really.
Next question, believe it or not, is for me. Does this mean the food bank is becoming more open to giving our most needy less meat and animal products and giving them other sources of healthy protein? Yes, absolutely. That's the point of my existence and what we work on every day. So yes. Another question, if looking at B12, do you need methylated B12?
There are people that don't methylate. They have a genetic a variation where they're poor methylators of cyanocoel, I can't even say it, B12. So I think that's pretty rare and pretty not, I think that's very, very specific and not very common. So I usually the run-of-the-mill regular old B12, very cheap. And you could take it you could take it sublingually. There's some that come sublingual, and then you don't have to worry about absorption issues. But I would say for most people, methylated is not needed.
What about intermittent fasting? Do you have an opinion?
We have some really well-informed viewers tonight, don't we? Yeah. Intermittent fasting, yeah. Or maybe you're referring to time-restricted eating, where you narrow your feeding window, and there's a lot of longevity studies associated with that. So, that ties into the methionine restriction I was talking about before. So they, total calorie restriction also increases longevity. But there are some side effects of that that aren't so good. And so methionine restriction was found to be sort of like a substitute for calorie restriction without all the disadvantages. But going back to the question about intermittent fasting, yeah, so narrow your feeding window. Your don't eat round the clock. Give your liver a break. Eat 12 hours a day, 10 hours a day. There's some great studies by Dr. Panda Sachin in Torrey Pines in La Jolla, basically, on this very subject. So yes, narrowing your food window, there's some really promising data on that.
But I'll also add that it's not a, personally, I can't do it because I need to eat all the time. Yeah.
And if you're taking insulin, of course, don't do that. You have to.
Adding to that, there are some, what Dr. Beth was saying, there's some great studies on intermittent fasting. I have done it in the past and I really, really liked it. And yeah, narrowing your window, just don't eat dinner at 9 p.m. or something like that. Just short that amount of time, and then you can go to bed and have 12, 14 hours without eating. So if it works for you, great. But yeah, you should be also, as Dr. Beth said, if you're taking insulin, you shouldn't be doing it.
Well, I am not surprised, but we used the whole hour. So thank you so much to all three of you and to Rooted Santa Barbara. We will follow up with more information from Rooted Santa Barbara, as well as this recording for all of our guests today. So thank you again for attending, and we hope you have a wonderful night. Bye,
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.